What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we are going to be talking about the Countdown Cup Grand Finals. We're going to be recapping the whole weekend. It was fantastic. It was a great tournament. A couple of dog matches in there too, but on the whole, it was a fun tournament to watch. See what a couple of new teams in there, get the vibe for the playoffs, see where teams were going, and of course get the final seedings for the playoffs and all that kind of thing. All right, before we get into that, all of your support's greatly appreciated. And if you're new, thanks a lot for stopping by, checking us out. I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week, depending on what's going on. Obviously, we're going to hit a little lull here, but we're going to hit some playoff stuff and talk about that before we get into that, of course. So, let's talk Countdown Cup. All right, we had our 4 teams in there. We had the Chengdu Hunters and the Seoul Dynasty from the East region. And from the West region, we had the Atlanta Reign and the Los Angeles Gladiators. Before we dive into some of the matches, though, I want to just do a quick overview of what happened. Talk about the first round matches and stuff like that before we dive into that epic final match that we had and what happened there with the Chengdu Hunters and the LA Gladiators. All right, going in, and not to be this way, but going in, I liked the Gladiators' chances. I looked at them as being overlooked, I guess. And even by me to a certain extent, I thought Atlanta was a lot better, and I thought Chengdu was going to be better. But I just had this feeling about the Gladiators, the way they had been playing in the knockout rounds. And even before that, they were kind of on this mission to get as many points as they can get to get into that playoff seeding. And they achieved that. You can't say enough about some of the players on this team. Obviously, Shu was amazing all weekend. Space, Kevster also was incredible. Birdring a little underrated over the week, skewed. The whole team played great. Muse even played really good. I mean, not that he was going to play bad, but on the whole, the Gladiators played fantastic throughout the whole weekend. There are some spots and things we're going to talk about in a second here where it could have gone a different way, barring a few things, but they were on top of their game the whole weekend, and they have shown some resiliency and some just things that we hadn't seen from this team in years past or even tournaments past. They bounced back. They have seems like a new attitude, a better attitude, and they're just taking care of business. When things get rough, they kind of rally around Space, and he gets them in the right direction. Now, a couple of teams that came in here that I expected a little bit more from. One of them, well, prediction-wise, I had them getting knocked out first, and that's Seoul. And without diving too much into their problems and issues, man, they were just not ready for this at all. They played Atlanta, and they got smoked. Kai absolutely owned them, and he owned the guys that I looked for on this team to provide the spark and the overall good gameplay in Prophet and Fitz and Gesture. I mean, he just tore them apart. And on the whole, there was a lot of other issues going on with them too. Composition-wise, they were all over the yard, doing weird stuff, and not in that Chengdu weird stuff where you're like, I don't get it, but I get it. All right, running Widow with a Brig and stuff like Chengdu was doing on rare occasions, you kind of could get it. But they were trying to force in Mei against Afara, and it just wasn't working. They were throwing maps away with some of these composition picks, and I just thought that they could have done a lot better than they did if they stuck with some of the stuff that got them there instead of just going for some of this cheeky weird shit with putting Prophet on Mei when you know damn well he's a good Farah, and he can do some things on 76 if you're trying to combat the Farah, and he was just getting neutralized a lot though by Kai, so it's really hard to quantify what he could have done out of the heroes because he was getting owned. And you guys know I'm a big Prophet stan, and they just tore him to pieces. And also Pelican played on high ping in this match, and it wasn't as high as it was the next day, which we're going to get into really quick. And before we dive more into the weekend, I want to just point out to everyone that has said things online, on like Twitter and stuff like that, about this Pelican ping thing and why couldn't they play in Los Angeles and all that. They were set up to play on the Asian servers. Fine. For production reasons, they didn't want to have to reroute everything and do all this different shit and try and re-rig it. for one match. You got to understand that. And also, nobody really thought he was going to play anyway on the other teams, I'm assuming, and general public-wise. I figured he was just going to sit out and they were going to play Edison, which would have been fine too. But to blame the fact that you lost, and Atlanta's not doing it, mind you, some fans and some people like Packing 10 and Halo, they're going off on these. You're basically pinning the loss on high ping. Pin the loss on your bad gameplay, and just don't say that. So if Pelican, yeah, he's a big deal. He matters a lot to this team. If he's making that much of a difference where you can't win a match when your life is on the line with a counterpart in Edison who could do a lot of things. They were winning when they had Edison last year. I mean, yeah, they didn't win big tournaments and stuff like that, but you see where I'm going with this. It's not out of the realm of possibility to beat a team with Edison in there instead of Pelican. Would Pelican have been a better option? Hell yeah, it would have. Could they have beaten the Gladiators? I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, Pelican could have gone off and just taken over the match, but he also could have gotten neutralized by the Gladiators too. The Gladiators are really good. They know what Atlanta does. They know what Pelican does. They can come out and neutralize them, and then you're making this other argument of, well, something else. I just don't. I don't want to hear it. Is what I'm getting into. They lost to the Gladiators. That's it. You can write this narrative of you got jobbed, you got screwed, and you know what? You can't complain about the travel because you were playing a team that traveled as well. So enough about that. It is what it is. Look, it's not like you lost to two. You didn't lose to the Valiant and the fucking Titans. You lost to the Gladiators and to the Hunters. You didn't get a map off of either one of them. I don't know if they weren't ready for it or what, but you know, end of the day, two of them. You're out of the tournament. It is what it is. You beat Seoul. You're better. Atlanta's better than Seoul on paper, and I've thought this all year. In fact, I picked them. I believe I picked them to beat them 3-1, and I figured Seoul would be in the losers bracket playing the Gladiators, not Chengdu. I thought the Gladiators would lose to Chengdu, and then work their way through the bottom bracket, and Chengdu would be in the top playing Atlanta. But here we are. You know, the Gladiators beat the Hunters twice. You know, could be a learning thing for the Hunters. There was a couple times in there where they were lost in the sauce. You know, they just doing the stuff they do, and I don't think they had a team hard counter them like the Gladiators did in that first match in a long time. And their guys were popping off. It's just the Gladiators played better, and in every match the Gladiators are in, they played better. End of story. Ping, whatever you want to blame it on, I don't care. The Gladiators played better. And that includes the C9s in the championship game that Chengdu committed. Playing better is having cart awareness. You know, Chengdu blew an opportunity. They possibly could have won 4-1 if they didn't have those couple of C9s. But that's part of keeping your head in the game while you're playing. I root for a team that C9s all the time. I understand when your head's in, the head in the game thing. But those are like the general thoughts I had over this. Gladiators played great. You know, and Atlanta didn't play bad either. They just got outplayed by a couple of teams that are just, on the level right now playing better than they are. Seoul, I don't know what Seoul was not ready for this. They were not at all in any way, shape, or form comfortable in any match that they played, the two that they played. They took one map off of Atlanta. They got buried by Chengdu. So, all right. So let's talk about a couple of the big matches. The first match against the Gladiators, we touched the Gladiators and the Hunters. We touched on that. And we touched a little bit on Atlanta and Seoul. And, there's really not much else to say about the matches that Seoul were in or the Atlanta Chengdu matches. They were both 3-0s. They were one-sided as one-sided could be. And that includes the Gladiators beating Atlanta, too. There was just 3-0s all over the place. And, at a certain point, their comps just weren't working. Teams had seen enough of it, and they picked up on some of the stuff in these matches with these teams that like Chengdu and the Gladiators. they're top-notch teams. They're going to see you play, and they're going to figure it out. One of the things that, they were trying those Rhine comps and stuff like that, they would work at times, but at other times they just didn't. And it just was, they lost. Seoul was, I don't know where Seoul was. They were apparently still, mentally on a different planet. I guess they were saving, they want the play-ins. I don't know. But they just played bad. Nobody really looked good at all. 2U looked okay. Gesture was back to gesture. And Prophet got owned by Kai in the first match, and he got pretty much shut down by Chengdu because they know the tendencies of that team by now. And they're just better than Seoul right now. The one match I want to focus on is obviously the championship match, which was unbelievable in what the things that happened in there. We had, like I said, C9s. We had all kinds of other things going on there. Comebacks, turnarounds, big lineup switches in the middle. Like the Hunters decided, like they were down 2-1, right? Or I'm sorry, there was a point where they were down 3-1, and they made some big lineup switches. But the first map they took pretty handily from the Gladiators. I thought it was going to be kind of maybe I'm wrong about the Gladiators. The Gladiators came out in the next two maps. They absolutely owned them on Temple of Anubis. They 1-0'd them, and the Hunters were just baffled by what was going on, I think. I don't know why. It wasn't like the Gladiators were playing something goofy. They were just playing better. And, it's hard to stop a team when Shu was unbelievable this whole match. And then you have guys like Space just knowing where to be. That veteran presence sometimes. Space has just picked his game up. And he just is in the right place at the right time a lot of the time. Does he make mistakes? Yeah. But he doesn't let it bother him. He just keeps going and does a good majority of things that you don't see with Peels and, just zoning out the Farah when they were playing Farah with Jinmu and stuff like that. Jinmu's hard to track down on Farah because of his angles. Space was doing a good job of taking care of some of that. And then you add in Birdring playing. His Sombra game picked up, but when they got him on the Hanzo, that was where it was just lights out. He was just headshot and everything and everybody. I don't know what it was. Lee was making a lot of big plays and stuff like that, but they could not keep track of Kevster. Kevster was just going all over the place, and just the first couple of maps and, even later on into the match, he just was making plays with pulse bombs and just taking the backline out all the time on the Tracer and a couple of the other heroes that he ran, not Genji a little bit. The Gladiators had them on the ropes, and then so the Hunters decide to make a wholesale swap, kind of, and on 66, after they lost Nimbani. Well, I guess not badly. They didn't look as good. They were just getting outplayed, and they were making a lot of mistakes. I think this was where one of the C9s was. That might have been Anubis. I forget off the top of my head right now. But I know they had one there, and they had one on, I'm sorry, it was the last map. It was Havana. But anyway, they put in Faraway 1987 and Ameng, and they just, I think they were trying to get a little fresh blood in there, get maybe a different skill sets in there to try and deal with some of the stuff, because Skewed was, the whole Gladiators team was playing out of their mind. I mean, I ran down just about everybody, but they managed to make it close on 66, but they lost. And then, so the next map, they put everybody back in. I think they had a little huddle in the back, and they just kind of got these guys, went over some strategies, the regular lineup, and they're like, hey, we got a couple maps to play with. If we just talk about this right now, we get a couple of things going for these next two maps, we'll be able to take care of this and at least get back into the fight, which they did. They absolutely destroyed the Gladiators on Ilios. You get the Farah play in there with Jinmu, and you're gonna, he's just making sick plays, and Leave was picking it up again. As much as I want Prophet to be the MVP, I really can't say that Leave shouldn't be the MVP, because he means so much to this team. When he's on, and even when he's a little bit off, he does a majority of the work for them. In big situations, he's making a lot of the plays. Whether it's on Tracer, he ran a little bit, did a little Genji, played some Hanzo. He just is insane. And he's hard to stop because his pathing on Tracer is impeccable. He knows when to pulse bomb who, his marks and his target selection is fantastic. On Hanzo, he's like Birdring, and a couple of these other guys, Kai, they just hit headshots from like 9 miles away. They're in fucking Canada, and they're, headshotting backline brigs and stuff like that. It's just insane to watch. On his back, and Gaga and Late Young is also an underrated dude on this team. He means so much to this team now, too. They came back, they take Ilios 2-0, and they literally flipped the narrative of this whole match. After they looked like they looked sunk. They all looked pretty dejected and everything. And, I think the Gladiators were confident as the match was going on. And maybe they got a little overconfident in Ilios and on King's Row. They got beat on King's Row 3-2. I mean, it was close enough. But Leave and a couple of the other guys made big plays that they needed to make. And you can't really say enough about these guys. But when it came to Havana, another MVP got involved in this, and that was Shu. And we'll get to that in 2 seconds, but it's a weird map. It plays into a lot of the strengths that the Hunters have, but the Gladiators must have been pretty confident to play on this. And the Hunters ran a double sniper in the beginning of it, and I was kind of iffy about it. It kind of slowed the Gladiators down a little bit. They did enough where Kevster was insane, and Shu was doing Shu things, of which, we've reserved that for guys like, Prophet and Leave and Jonak in the day. Jonak doing Jonak things. Taking out the whole team and whatnot. There was so much tension in this. I love it when these games are this close. You have a narrative where a team comes back from the brink of disaster and they brought it back this far, and you're watching the team that was in control most of the match try and nut up and win a map to win the whole series and the tournament and all that. And there was a lot of just big plays being made. Birdring was doing his thing again on Hanzo, and Kevster, who was a menace. We talked about it briefly, but holy crap, this dude, when he's on his game, he is just, whether he's playing Genji or Tracer or whatever, he's just nuts. And I think this is a big thing for the Gladiators, because they were doing the flip in with Mirror and stuff like that. Yeah, there's certain heroes you're going to want Mirror on instead of Kevster. He just has he's a little bit better on them. But for the most part, you're having Birdring flip-flop between Hanzo and a long range, whether it's maybe a 76 or sometimes, Hanzo, Widowmaker. He's doing that stuff. And the rest of the other work is going on Kevster's shoes. And he's doing a fantastic job. And he helped them get the cart. They didn't get it all the way in, but they took it enough where it became a problem for the Hunters on their attack. So they start going in, and it looks like they got some good momentum going. Solid, just moving the cart, the whole 9 yards, doing what they needed to do to try and outpace where the Gladiators went. And then MVP candidate shows up with an amp matrix behind them, and they look like they were just about ready to clean up and take the point and start pushing for the win. And Shu goes behind them with an amp matrix and just annihilates. I think he got 4 or 5, and he started before because he was going down the side stairs by that doorway where you guys know the map. You go around that little the double staircase thing there, out of that one room up on top. He heals up space. He hits a shot. He goes down and draws. As soon as that amp matrix went down, he knew exactly what he was doing. He went right behind them, and he just took out both tanks, and I believe he took out one. He might have taken out both supports or one of them, because Birdring was on an off angle, firing arrows like storm arrows into it too, and not through the amp matrix, but still they had like a double-sided, just insane play. Most of it came on the back of Shu, and they take this match, win it, and that was the tournament winner and the playoff seeding winner thing for the Gladiators. Sad to see Chengdu lose a little bit, because the way they came back, it was just great to watch them just nut up and just make a good showing out of this and show the Gladiators what they were made out of. One of the best teams in the league. And the Gladiators held on. Big plays by Shu, Kevster, Birdring, the whole lot of them. They just played insane this whole weekend. And props to them. Congrats to the Gladiators for winning the Countdown Cup. I think it's great because I picked them, of course. So I'm going to gloat a little bit about that. But, I'm one of the few that had the Gladiators. But it was a risky pick. I'm not denying that. I'm not like some mega insider that knew some stuff. I just like the way the Gladiators were playing. And I went with them. Real quick, though, let's hit those playoff seedings and talk about that before we go. I'm going to take a few days off, guys. I have some things I have to do because we were talking about it before, what's going on. So I am moving I believe it's on the 9th. So I'm going to get an episode up before then with a little preview of the weekend. And then on the 15th, I'm going on vacation to California. Unfortunately, not to the finals. So I'm going to try my damnedest to get something before I leave up. I'm hoping I can do that. And then I will be back on Saturday night, and I'll be able to at least watch the match on an encore or replay, or if Delta has Wi-Fi, I can watch it on the plane. But I am going to talk about this. We are going to talk about the playoffs. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up as to where things are going. So I got a lot of stuff going on in the next 2 weeks in real life. So I'm gonna take a few days off, and I have to do some IRL stuff. We're gonna talk MVP and awards thing. We're gonna do one of those. I'm gonna do a playoff ranking show. Just a couple of quick shows in there talking about my thoughts on. And this is not that's not gonna be a prediction show. I'm just gonna rank all the teams in the playoffs, top to bottom, and then we'll do a prediction show, and then we'll figure it out from there. I might be doing some stuff on social media as far as my predictions and stuff like that, because I am going to be on vacation, and I try to distance myself from things because, we all need time off. Unfortunately, I had plane tickets that were expiring from last year that I had bought, and Blizzard didn't make an announcement until, of course, the last minute, and, here we are. So I'm not griping about it. Do I wish I could do some live streams and talk about stuff with you guys live during that, like I do a lot of the times in the playoffs? Yes, I do. But here we are. We're going to do this, and we're going to talk about it when we can. All right, so let's hit those standings. All right, guys, so here are the final seedings. We're going to go region by region right now because we do have that knockout thing. Top 3 in the West, we have Dallas, LA, and the Reign. Top 2 in the East, we have Shanghai and Chengdu. Okay, and then the rest, the teams that are playing in the West play-ins, we have Houston, Washington, Toronto, Paris, and Boston. No surprise there. And that was the order. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 5 we have Houston, 6 we have Washington, 7 we have Toronto, 8 we have Paris, 9 we have Boston squeaking in. And then in the East, we have Seoul at 3, Philly at 4, Hangzhou Spark at 5. Now we do have matches set for APAC because they're not doing. They don't have the amount of teams, so they're not doing the selection. There's one game and then the final play-in game. The team gets by. The East is kind of set. We have Hangzhou taking on Philly, and then winner of that takes on Seoul. Now in the East games, we have a similar-ish situation. We have Washington and Toronto. Everybody gets to pick their opponent, too, which is fantastic. I love that. And that Washington and Toronto play first, and then San Francisco and Houston get a bye in this tournament segment. So they will be playing one of the 4 teams remaining. So Washington, it's either going to be Washington and Paris, Washington and Boston, Toronto, Paris, Toronto, Boston. And then selection by San Francisco or Houston as to who they're playing in those. And then we move on. And then we get our 2 teams going into the playoffs, which will be live in Dallas, which is fantastic. Can't wait. I can't wait for any of these. But, all right, guys, that is going to do it for this one. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been greatly, greatly appreciated. Had fun watching this tournament. Of course, talking with you guys. I got my pick right for a change, and it was a hard pick. Picking between the other ones, you know, you either had a choice of Shanghai or Dallas. You know, you could go out on a limb here or there, but you know, this was a tough one, and I got it right. So I'm pretty high on that. So don't mind me for the gloating. And if you're a Chengdu fan or an Atlanta fan or a Seoul fan, I'm sorry. Anyway, that's going to do it, guys. Thank you very much. All of your support's been greatly, greatly appreciated throughout the whole season, the last 3 seasons, and the seasons to come. Thank you very much. If you're new, thanks a lot for joining me. Thanks for stopping by, checking us out. If you can hit a like, hit a subscribe, all the YouTube jazz, that would be fantastic. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you on the next one.